Hi, my name is Chris and I'm doing my PhD with Exeter University. My research focuses on cat-human relations and discourses surrounding free roam and urban cats. Today I'm going to talk about a chapter tentatively titled Feral and Out of Control, a Moral Panic Over Domestic Cats. Known to many as the notoriously independent companion animal that roams neighborhoods worldwide, Felis catus occupies a somewhat liminal status between a domesticated and wild or wild-like animal. My research asks, what are the various discourses surrounding free roaming and free living cats? And examines social discourses surrounding cats living in urban neighborhoods, exploring various ideas about domestic, urban, and wild animals and points of contention regarding free roaming neighborhood cats. To answer this question, I employed a thematic discourse analysis of comments and exchanges associated with media stories surrounding free roaming cats. I first collected comments responding to 7 different news articles, magazine pieces, and YouTube videos. These were chosen to get a variety of responses from both cat guardians and those not emotionally attached to cats. For example, the YouTube video by Galaxy Jackson discussed his take on whether or not you should keep your cat inside. Now, Galaxy's fan base of cat lovers ensured a wealth of reactions and responses from cat guardians around the world. The BBC and Daily Mail news articles provided a means to sample reactions from individuals who are less emotionally attached to cats. And what is interesting about these is the majority of comments are not discussing the article's content, but rather using it as a platform to complain about predation and the perceived nuisance behaviours of their local urban neighbourhood cats, or to defend their cat's right to roam. This data consisted of almost 2,500 comments from 1,800 unique users. Comments that went beyond the scope of my thesis were coded as off-topic and put aside. The remainder I divided between 3 thematic groups that comprise key chapters in my PhD thesis. The group I'm going to talk about today are comments containing discourses about cats and wildlife and free-living urban cats. To build upon emerging themes, I also developed a qualitative survey, and this generated data from a further 77 respondents. One prominent theme was cat predation, that is, cats killing wildlife. Concern for predation of local wildlife, especially birds, is a major source of contention between neighbours, both with and without cats. And predation by cats is often disapproved of. In response to Galaxy Jackson's reasons to keep cats indoors, comments along the lines of, he didn't mention the horrible impact cats have on wildlife. They're responsible for several extinctions. So there is this belief that cats are an ecological disaster everywhere. Even cat guardians, especially those in the US, sometimes support cat confinement for the sake of wildlife, although this is often secondary to concerns for cat safety. In the UK, cat guardians are more likely to believe that cats are happier roaming and accept predation to varying degrees as just what cats do, or claim their cat does not hunt, like Susan here. Although bird predation is more likely to be frowned upon, occasionally cat predation is praised as a sign of vitality. This commenter said about their elderly cat, she still hunts like a 3-year-old. My analysis of 80 comments that shared stories or attitudes from cat guardians related to their cat's hunting prowess. These were subdivided into 3 categories, namely, rather they didn't, which was a begrudging acceptance of hunting behaviours, similar to Crowley et al. And their definition of tolerant guardians. A certain pride in their cat's hunting prowess, and a denial of their cat's hunting activities. However, MacDonald et al. Reported no correlation between the actual predation of cats and cat guardian predicted prey return rates amongst individual predatory cats. So Susan may or may not hunt, or she might just kill songbirds when her human isn't looking. And those who are not fans of cats are less likely to believe a neighbour's cat does not kill wildlife. And several comments were quick to call out remarks such as, "My cat would not kill anything. He doesn't even chase a mouse." And there is no short supply of anti-cat comments such as, "Cats are awful, selfish killing machines. They kill for fun, not just to eat." And conservationist literature provides plenty of fodder to this anti-cat sentiment. Indeed, 20 responses to the emotive BBC headline, "Should cats be culled to stop extinction?" simply wrote, "Yes," often capitalized. Research clearly shows predation by cats is a threat to endemic wildlife populations in many places. And I'm not arguing against the science per se. However, I am questioning how conservationist discourse feeds into attitudes towards free living and free roaming urban cats in westernized neighborhoods, namely the US and UK. My data shows how news articles were frequently taken out of context, with many comments apparently responding solely to the sensationalist headline. The BBC article was based on a peer-reviewed paper about invasive species, but the majority of comments reacted to the inflammatory headline and seem not to have noticed that the article itself addressed the unique environmental effects of invasive species on isolated islands. Of course, there are those who pointed this out, but the voices of reason were drowned by expressions of anti-cat sentiment associated with free-roaming neighborhood cats, predominantly in the UK. There were outcries about the idea of killing cats, which is interesting because the original paper and news article was not solely about cats, but also talked about rats and pigs. The headline, "Should cats be culled to stop extinctions?" is emotive and misleading. You have to read the article to realize that it is about specific ecosystems. However, people often do not read beyond the subheadline, and the comments related to either a fear of pet cats being targeted or glee at the idea of killing neighborhood cats reflected that. So Lynn et al. Have accused fellow academics of creating a moral panic over cats by misrepresenting free-roaming cats and framing them as a global threat to biodiversity, rather than a localized threat to specific ecosystems. And these authors are not denying that cats are a threat to some populations in certain ecosystems, but they are saying that this is not the case everywhere, and that the discourse is creating a moral panic. So what is meant by a moral panic? Well, the concept was first outlined by Cohen in 1972. And here are the 5 stages and key players of a moral panic. So a moral panic is something or someone being defined as a threat or a value to common interests. This threat is depicted in an easily recognizable form by the media. There's a rapid buildup of public concern, and followed by a response from authorities or opinion makers. And then the panic recedes or results in social changes. And these are often negative. So essentially, moral panics are escalated by emotive journalistic pieces that are read by audiences around the world. From my data, it is apparent that information is being processed through a local lens. For example, in response to the article discussing cat populations in rural Australia, one commenter wrote, "I don't understand why people think it's okay to let their cats roam in the neighborhood or poop in people's gardens." Is this evidence of an unnecessary panic over cats fueled by irresponsible conservationist discourse and journalism? Or is it something else? And I would be really interested to hear your thoughts on this. Although I'm not convinced how useful it is to focus on arguing or whether or not there is a moral panic over cats. However, I do think that it's useful to think about how we think about cats. Reactions to the BBC article and similar reports to the problem of free-roaming cats also responded defensively. And what is interesting is that they were reacting to an imagined scenario whereby cats in the suburban neighborhoods were under attack, with several expressing sentiments such as, "Leave my cat alone." However, the more aggressive comments clearly viewed their neighborhood cats as pests or vermin, even expressing a desire to see them come to harm. Others expressed a reluctant acceptance to the idea of killing feral cats as being not nice, but something necessary. Although this latter group did tend to be more directed towards the subject of cats living in areas where they were impacting endemic species, some also spoke in support of keeping companion cats inside for the sake of wildlife. Although there were nuances, discourse related to freely roaming cats are often polarizing. And my analysis revealed how contradictory thinking was regarding free-living cats. Cats were reviled as killers of wild animals, or seen as wild animals themselves. In response to a Daily Mail headline showing an image of a large free-living cat emerging from the bush with a dead goanna, a comment read, "Why is this cat frightening? It's a wild animal with its prey in the desert." But at the same time, free-living cats are not valued highly as wildlife. Another comment reads, "I love my pets, but when they go feral, it's a different story." So Sutton and Taylor draw attention to how the media play a central role in defining the boundaries of classifications such as feral or pest that render groups of free-living animals more killable. Another example is this response to comments expressing concerns that all cats were being threatened with death, when the original BBC News article was referring specifically to free-living Icelandic cats, as well as other non-native species. It reads, "Calm down, folks. There's a big difference between little Fluffy you adore and a feral cat population. For a start, feral cats are not pets. They're wild animals." So from a conservationist perspective, populations are assigned greater value than the individual. However, the essential difference between Fluffy and a cat living apart from humans is their circumstance of birth. But the wording of the above comment implies that being cherished and cared for by humans renders the feline life inherently more valuable. And what does feral or wild mean in this context? So conservationists are concerned with preserving wild animal species, and Felis catus is not a wildcat species, nor considered a wild animal worthy of protection. And as a species, Felis catus is far from threatened. In this respect, conservationist ethos is inherently speciesist. However, to render lethal management strategies of a species such as Felis catus more palatable, there is this need to separate and other certain members of the species, hence feral. Examples emerge from my analysis that demonstrate how the feral prefix renders cats as other and undesirable, and fosters the perception that they are morally less significant than companion animals of the same species. To explore further how language shapes how humans think about cats, both as individuals and as species, I posed the question, what does feral mean to you, to various cat appreciation groups on Facebook? I received 771 responses across 5 Facebook groups. Feral was many things, but 35% of those things were wild, often just as a single word or combined with one of these other qualifiers: untamed, untamable, homeless, unsocialized, undomesticated, not domesticated, and wild nature. And some of these terms were also used alone. So essentially, wild is being used synonymously with feral to either mean a wild-like behavior, a lifestyle, or a state of being. Sometimes feral cats were viewed as independent and free creatures who don't need us humans. However, feral generally invoked ideas of cats in need of rescuing or saving, or as a problem that needed solving. And while there exists various ideas about feral cats, feral is most often a negative, derogatory term. Cats occupy a liminal status of being neither fully domesticated nor completely wild, something that Crowley et al. Discuss in their paper, Our Wild Companions, Domestic Cats in the Anthropocene. Cats living inside, alongside, and outside of human society are subject to social and biological control. The language used by scientists, the media, and policymakers shapes how animal others are perceived as pets, pests, problems, or worthy of protection. Regardless of whether or not conservationist and media discourse are creating or fueling a moral panic over free-roaming cats, how we think about cats does matter. And I'm now beginning to conceive of ways we can begin thinking more sensibly about cats, which would require moving away from this black and white approach whereby all free-roaming cats are considered a scourge. We also need to think of cats as individuals, not just as populations. And we need to consider cats roaming within the context of a particular environment. And I do believe environmentalist issues need to be disentangled from social discourse about free roaming urban cats. And with that, I'm happy to answer questions. And as this paper is far from polished, I'm more than happy to receive constructive feedback. Thank you.